Welcome to Lawyers Who Learn, where we explore how attorneys' engagement and lifelong learning fuels their growth. Join us to uncover these journeys and gain insights for your legal career.
Alexander, welcome to Lawyers Who Learn. Really excited to go beyond the 15-minute conversation that we usually get to have at ClioCon or other places we've seen each other and dive deep into who you are and your learning and growth journey.
David, thanks for having me, pal. Ditto on my end. We get anything. If I can get a minute more than 15 with you, I'm going to take it.
So you run your own firm. You're based in Miami. Your firm specializes in general liability, workers' comp, commercial litigation, correct? Just want to make sure I have that.
And a significant real estate piece. That's the only one you were missing.
Cool. And real estate. You have about 25.
We have about 29 individuals with 13 lawyers.
29 individuals, 13 of those being lawyers. And what we're going to uncover today is how you ended up here, how you ended up being in a technology-focused firm from day one, being probably Clio being one of the tools that you used early on.
Yeah.
But more importantly, as importantly, I should say, is how excited you are for what's happening now with AI and what you guys have done to get your firm up to speed, what you're continuing to do, and go through where we see this happening for 80% of practices are 50 and under. So where you see this going. So others who listen to this who are the same size firm or smaller even can learn a little bit from what you guys have already done. Does that sound good?
That sounds good, man. Raw and unfiltered. Let's go.
All right. So let me start with this. I think you come across as somebody who has told your story many times, whether in person or through public speaking or just through colleagues. Is there any conversation or topic that you don't really get to dive into as much about your learning and growth story, or you just say, okay, we could have moved to New York, but we stayed in Miami and then we had kids and we built it up? Is there like a more raw, real, vulnerable, or some story of that kind of tells the real you that we can like just jump right into?
Yeah, man. So yeah, I think, you know what, that's a great one. That's a good question, man. So thanks again for having me, man. I appreciate it. I really enjoy watching and listening to your podcast. Saw the one with Ed Walters recently too, which was really cool. Thank you. As a lawyer who's always trying to learn, I appreciate what you do to keep the rest of us informed and on our toes. So a little shout out to you for what you do, man. Appreciate it. Look, I'll tell you that that's an easy one for me, which is I'm a first generation American. So for me, that's the simple part of the story. For me, my parents are both Cuban immigrants that came here, literally one of those uphill both ways to school in the snow type people. When they got here, my dad ended up in Virginia. There's no snow in Cuba, and came over as young teenagers. And they instilled in me when I was young this kind of understanding that you had to work your ass off. That's it. And there's nothing. And how could you not when you grew up watching them having to put every sacrifice they did for us? So really, that's it. That was the work ethic for me and for my sister since we were kids. That was something that has sat with us ever since, sat with me ever since. And when there are dark days, and there are some days where in the past where we have struggled as you do in this profession and trying to push forward and trying to continue to push forward, that has always been the gas in the engine, which has been to continue to push forward. So nothing about the law, nothing about the typical journey. That's it for me. That was the gas that I still continue to use.
So how old were your parents when they came here?
My dad was what's called Operation Peter Pan, was 10,000 Cuban kids that were young. My dad was 13 years old, part of the Archdiocese Catholic Church in the United States. It brought 10,000 young children without their parents. He didn't see his parents for 5 years. Yeah, when he came over at the age of 13. I'm telling you this story. That's why it's raw.
What year?
So this was my dad was born in 1945. So we're talking about 1959. So that was the Castro year of the invasion down in Miami, eternally tied to the Cuban connection. Cubans built this city. And so that was my dad and my mom both had similar journeys, but my dad's was through Operation Peter Pan. He ended up in Virginia, where he ended up studying architecture at Virginia Tech.
I've never heard of Operation Peter Pan before, just to get a sense. So it was 10,000 Cuban children who the church was trying to help give a better life? Like, what was the
Displaced. Yeah.
process?
So displaced. Yeah. So Operation Peter Pan displaced through communism, right? As Fidel came in 1959, 1960, children that families had to make the ultimate sacrifice, right? There's many, whether it's so the Jewish people, whether it's the Cuban people, there's a lot of these exodus moments in history. And that was the Cuban people where parents had to make decisions about whether or not, as they were forced to stay behind, to literally ship their children off through the Catholic Church, which in the US came there and then ended up with children being placed literally in orphanages and with foster families
Okay.
throughout the country. And my dad was one of those kids, ended up in Virginia, where he ended up studying architecture at Virginia Tech, moved back to Miami, where he met my mother, and they got married and then raised my sister and I here.
Getting very emotional, like hearing this.
It's
because
awesome, man. It was really cool. And I'll tell you something real quick. There was something called the fishbowl in that time where, as the kids were being separated from their parents, being boarded on airplanes where the parents were looking at their kids for the first time, the fishbowl was known as this glass enclosure where I use that metaphor of there was a Star Trek movie when Spock had died many years ago, and they did this little finger on the glass. And it was kind of like that was the last touch that you had with your parents, was glass to glass, not real fingers, as the families were saying goodbye to watch their young boys and girls
Yeah.
leave airplanes, and you didn't know when you were going to see them again. In my dad's case, it was almost 5 years, but you knew you had to send your kid away if you wanted them to have survival, as communism was about to take over Cuba. So and there's a lot of families in Miami that have very similar stories.
You mentioned Jews. My
Yeah.
dad is first generation as well. His mother, and it's kind of a similar story. There was pogroms going on it was Ukraine. It was then part of Russia, and she came here when she was 13 years old on a boat by herself to escape. And I think there might have been a family member or two already here. But you think about it now, just with and then of course during World War II,
Yeah.
how many people sent their kids somewhere and either
Ugh.
never saw them again or not. And it's very similar to Cuba. Nobody knew what was going to happen in Cuba, right? And so they didn't know what was going to happen to themselves. Obviously, you think potentially you're going to die or your lives are going to be really that terrible to send your kids away to protect them. And the choice of that and
Is unfathomable, David. Can you
unfathomable.
imagine? And
No.
you mentioned Ukraine. I know they're going through a similar situation now where you have parents sending their boys away because
Yeah.
the death rate for them to otherwise be sent into battle is really
Yeah.
significant. And that you and your family went through it. I'm the first person ever on both sides of the family tree to have been born in the United States. So that to me it's my love of America.
Yeah.
I tell people my mom and my dad are Cuban-American. I'm American-Cuban. I'll never forget where they were from, but I'm enormously thankful for being born
Sure.
here. And as a result of that work ethic, it has been something that's driven me ever since.
Can I ask, is your mom have a similar story or is it a little
Yeah,
different?
you can ask. No, you can ask whatever you want. Her story is not as dramatic in that sense, but yes, like many now people in their 70s and 80s in Miami, she also came over, but her story was more direct. She was brought over by plane, came here to Miami, where she actually was able to enroll in the local Coral Gables High School, went to the University of Miami, got a master's in education. These are people, David, yeah, like you mentioned, like your dad, these are people that came here with nothing. I mean,
Yeah.
with nothing. And
Yeah.
when you grow up around that, we were a middle-class family with my mom and my dad working government jobs, which back then a lot of families did. And they're reaping a little bit of that benefit now, by the way, because they nice little pension in their 70s and 80s. But they worked their asses off so that my sister and I could have a better life. So my mom's story was more direct from Cuba to Miami, but still
Yeah.
very similar.
But
With
like,
no means.
did she escape or she was like,
She escaped. She escaped, but when in that time there was also families who were able to escape. So she was able to come over with my grandmother. But what a lot of families did, they were come over, again, very similar to the Jews' exodus too, right? But in their case, he came over with nothing. My dad's sister has a story of how she had to cut the bottom of a tube of toothpaste, empty out the toothpaste to put her wedding ring and a few pieces of jewelry there and sew it back together so she could get her marital ring out, because otherwise they wouldn't let you leave with it. There's so many stories like that that you hear. My mother's story was very direct, but was the same for almost every Cuban that left at that time. You showed up with nothing. And you came into this city, which was really not much at the time. And you come to Miami now, I think you're coming next week. You come to Miami now and you think about what this city was 60 years ago in the time frame that we're talking about, and it's now a global city. It started with the exodus of really smart people with nothing in their pocket who helped build this place to what it is.
You should know when I got married, since my in-laws are from Miami, we actually got married it's called Cuban Hebrew. So it's a Jewish Cuban temple.
There's a lot of that. We affectionately refer to them as the Cubans locally. We have a lot. Yeah,
Exactly.
We have a lot. And that's the thing. It's funny you say that because there's so much of that now here, right? The culture of here, of infusion and everything, even the mix of what we just talked about has really made this city, and really a primary reason why all these years later, I'm now 52 years old. I've left for a while, went to college, on law school, et cetera, but really came back here, and we wanted a sense of family for our own kids.
Yeah.
So my wife, who's also from here, we decided to make this home.
And actually, that's a great segue, because I know one of the things that you were trying to make a decision about when you were trying to build a practice is to move to the Northeast.
I was going to quit. Yeah.
So tell us about that.
Yeah, I was going to quit. And it's such a great
Quit
segue
what?
why I love
Quit
it.
what?
Quit the practice of law. I didn't want to practice anymore. I had a job offer from Credit Suisse to go become a money manager and work with a group up out in New York and live in Connecticut, where my best friend at the time was doing well for himself, and I was tired of practicing. So this would have been just about 18 years ago. We had a almost 1 year old, and my wife and I were she was just getting pregnant with our second. This was the time I was literally going to give up the practice. So it was a good segue to what we're talking about. And this was everybody in that generation. And I was like, this got to be a better mousetrap. And before I decided to just open up my own shop, I decided to really look at leaving the profession itself, because I didn't know if this was the business I wanted to do. So what really at the end of the day was, when I got up, we stayed with my best friend and his wife, had a beautiful home in Connecticut, and we started talking. And even though I had a job offer while I was there, my wife and I made the decision, you know what, we've got 2 kids. These 4, they're up here alone. And really, as we talked, we realized it was a lot to try and raise 2 kids without any family around, like 0. And we grew up the opposite, right? We had our grandparents around. We had my parents around. She had her parents around. And we had aunts, uncles, cousins, and stuff. And it just was something that we thought would deprive our children something a little different. So at the end of the day, it was the kids and wanting them to grow up around family. And I got to be honest with you, when we look back on it, I don't regret it at all. My kids, my oldest is about a senior, about to graduate from high school. And that was it. It was about coming back. And the reality that back then, if you were a broker or you were going to work in money, you had to be in New York. Now nobody cares where you are. But back then, they wanted you sitting in a chair in New York if you were going to manage money, regardless of where they were. And we made that decision. And frankly, looking back 20 years later, I don't regret it.
Is that when you made the decision to start your own firm, or did you have...
I left, incorporated what was Alexander P. Almazan, PA, now known as Almazan Law at the time. Alex Almazan, PA sounds too small. But when I was by myself, that's what we did. And we decided, let's go. And I went on my own shortly thereafter.
And just to circle back for 1 second, first generation in the US, obviously that means first generation in college and then in law school. How did you make the decision to go to law school?
So also I think growing up in a Cuban-Immigrant family, there was like, you're a doctor, you're a lawyer. Right? I think you talk about your Jewish faith. I think there's some similarities there, maybe just a little bit, but it was a little bit of that for sure, is right, that professional upbringing that was taught to you. A little bit of you're arguing all the time when you're a kid, that kind of stuff. And I sucked at English in high school, and I think I got like a 460 on my math SAT. So I really made it a point of changing that in college, and I really started to enjoy writing, reading, arguing, the law. So it actually naturally fit. So thankfully, although it was like you had to be a doctor or lawyer, I hated science, hated medicine, hated blood. That was really the impetus, was to go straight through and went to law school. Yeah.
So it was just impounded in you. That's what you're doing.
Impounded.
You didn't question it. Out of curiosity, at home, you grew up speaking Spanish, I assume?
So I grew up around my grandmother a lot while both of my parents worked. So my grandmother spoke poor English. So thankfully I didn't learn that. Maybe that's why I got a 460 actually on the SAT. I think
there you go.
Yeah, but she would, but that's where I learned Spanish. It was from being around her a lot. So no, with my parents, so my name is Alexander, not Alejandro. My parents made a really big deal of making sure we're born in America to try and Americanize this young. So there was a lot of English speaking at the house. My parents both spoke English, but when I was around my grandparents, there was absolutely Spanish.
Did you ever decide to speak Spanish with your children so they would learn that, or not necessarily?
Yes. Yeah. So my wife was working at the time we had our first. I was too. We hired a nanny to help so that my wife could continue to work, and I would too. And she was Colombian. And if there's any Colombians listening to what I'm about to say, they're going to be like, yeah, I agree. Colombians like to tell people that they speak the best Spanish in the world. And actually, I'm not gonna jump on a ledge and say yes, but if they're not one, they're two. They do. have a tendency to speak really appropriate Spanish for those. So it was actually nice to have her around. I didn't have to worry about the slang that unfortunately my people as Cubans, we don't necessarily speak the best all the time. It was actually helpful, but very early on, within a few years, especially after my wife had our second, we kept the woman around to help, but my wife stopped working. So she'd be around with the two kids. So in between our Colombian nanny, more than my wife, my kids definitely grew up around Spanish, but we primarily spoke English.
Did you ever visit Cuba as an adult?
Man, the hairs are going to stand up. So we did. So my dad was and my mom too, most Cubans. In fact, I would venture to say almost all of them from that generation that left in 1959, not very different than asking somebody of Jewish descent to go back to Germany. I think you'll find the same way, right? Is that you're not going to find the same way you're not going to find a lot of Jewish people driving BMWs. You're not going to find a lot of Cubans from that generation that are going to go back to Cuba. And my dad was definitely one of those. He was like, swore he would never go back.
So you never went yourself?
Until my dad was older. My in-laws were both born in Cuba. So my wife, when my father-in-law turned 70 a little over 10 years ago, my father-in-law got convinced by his kids to go to Cuba. And I remember, I'll never forget, I went over to my dad's house and I told my dad, I said, hey, Dad, Osvaldo's, my father-in-law, they're going to go to Cuba. Obviously, my wife's going to go. But I promised you I would never go while you were alive without your consent or without you going with me. And my dad said, son, you're married. This is what your wife's doing. Go with her. And I said, I tell you what, if I go and it turns out to be what I want it to be, will you come with me for another trip? And he said, well, let's wait and see. So I came back, long story short, showed him the video, showed him all the pictures. And about 20 seconds into the first video of the trip, he got up, he couldn't watch it. He started crying. And it took him a little while. And then I convinced him. And 2 years later, my wife and I and my sister took my dad and my mom's sister back for the first time in over 60 years.
Wow.
This was about 8 years ago. We took my dad and my mom for the first time. I have video of them getting off in Santa Clara, Cuba, where my mom was from, on one of those airplanes, right, where they bring out the stairs so that you literally touch Cuban soil for the first time. And my mom started crying. My dad, and we stayed there for 2 weeks and just made it a trip about having them take us to where you grew up, where'd you go to school, where was the neighborhood where was this, that, and the other. So it was a lot of crying for 2 weeks, but they were so happy they did it because I didn't want those stories to die with them. And this is a great part. My dad is a lifelong super Catholic, as my kids refer to him as. He ended up going back to Cuba over the course of the next 5 years. He passed away a couple of years ago, but he ended up going back to Cuba over the next 5 years, over 10 times as part of his Catholic church to deliver the message of Jesus and to bring medicine and clothing back to poor Cubans. So he actually turned it into, I'm never going back again. So he went.
You're going to make me cry in this podcast.
Yeah. I hope that's a first if that happens, but
no, it's not. Unfortunately, we get like I said, it's like therapy.
Yeah. Buddy, you told me to be raw. I mean, that's my story, man.
Look, I appreciate, and I think to me, the learning and growth journey is so much about who you are versus like what you do in your practice. And I think people really appreciate that. I did go to Cuba as well with my wife during when Obama was president, when it got opened up for some time. And first of all, we loved the experience. It was a very weird and eerie feeling because nothing had been, like, the buildings looked like there was like a war, and all the buildings there was mortar attacks and things like that, but it was just, there was no upkeep. And so buildings were just literally falling apart everywhere. It was a very weird, eerie thing. And
David, did you feel like when you were there, did you feel like as you were looking at it, sorry to cut you off.
No,
I feel like the best explanation, it looks like a place that used to be beautiful and then just got completely neglected.
It's
like
100% neglected.
The buildings, you could still see the remnants of like wonderful art,
100%,
and pillars and mosaics and weird and colors that were just different, and architecture. You can understand why it was the jewel of the Caribbean. You can see it almost.
And then you see the buildings when like Russia got involved, and there's just like all these buildings that look like barracks. And I remember we were speaking to one of the locals there, and it was maybe like a 12-story building. And he's like, yeah, there's no elevators. We just walk up to get our food. And they would tell us about like when they want to get meals or like chicken, they can get it once a month. They had to show up at the grocery store, and they just these stories, because I was like talking to as many locals as I could. And communism was really tough.
It was really tough, right? It was, I would tell you, tough there, I went to the University of Havana for the day with my brother-in-law alone, while the rest of the family went and did something else. And we wanted to go into the University of Havana because one thing is they pride themselves on education is from there. But we went
Yeah.
over there. We wanted to talk to people. I walked right into the library, went in. I was almost wanted to create an international incident. I wanted to be the American in Cuba who was going to get arrested and had to have the Obama administration to
Yeah.
come get me. I was literally that guy. I went in, talked to a bunch of students. They took us to a local bar where we just sat with them for 5 hours and had the most amazing, David, if I had you there with a microphone with how well you interview, I would have just let you handle everything. It was so amazing to listen to them tell us these horrible stories, but this honest truth. Fast forward after I did that 3 or 4 different days and walked to places I shouldn't have gone, we actually got pulled over by local police and were told that our van had been flagged because of the places it had been going to. And that they escorted us the rest of the day, which was the day we were flying out, and escorted us to the airport because they had flagged our van as problematic, literally because we were going to places that they didn't want people to go to.
Totally. Did you ever, there's a documentary, and I'm forgetting the name right now. I saw it, about this reporter who was given access to Cuba over a period of 20, 25, 30 years. And he was able to interview Fidel Castro over this period of time and also follow around these local guys on a farm. Do you know what I'm talking about at all?
I don't, but that doesn't mean that it's not awesome. And I'm going to look it up.
So I will do some research afterwards and find it. But it was unbelievable. Okay. And just as a side note, I have to mention, I think the difference though with Germany right now is Jews do, like, Germany's a different government, a different country. It's a Western society.
Yes. So true.
And I know a lot of Jews who own BMWs. So I'd say that I'd say Cuba is still stuck, obviously,
stuck in time.
Different reasons, but and to some degree, Germany is actually one of the safer places for Jews in Europe right now compared to other areas. All right, let's move on from the past
history
and talk about the present. I guess you decide to stay, and you start to build your own firm, and now you have 25 or 27 people, 13 are attorneys. Is there any like moments, if you think about along your journey, where things accelerated quicker in the past 18 years? Or was it literally like one attorney this year, 2 attorneys? Did you just slowly grow per year?
So I can remember the almost exact moment. I would say for the first 8 years, my transition was, I hate the practice of law. My experiences have been horrible. Let me take another job. Oh, wait, no, I want to grow my family over here. Wait, my network's pretty good. Hold on, I'm actually a really good lawyer. Let me represent a few clients. And then I put up a wall to almost prevent my growth for about 5 to 6 years. I was a sole practitioner for the first probably 6, 7 years, and I was by myself on purpose. I tried trying to find different things to see if I had my passion. At one point, I sold 150,000 liters of an organic adjuvant to the country of Ecuador associated with the diminishing use of glyphosate in banana farming. How about that for
I have no idea what you just said, but it sounds interesting.
Yeah, so went through a company and it was a client of mine who had come up with an organic adjuvant that you could use to diminish the use of glyphosate, which was ruining the planet. And in Ecuador, I had some contacts. Next thing you know, I spent 3 years, went to Ecuador like 10 times to try and grow an organic agricultural farming company down in Ecuador aimed at helping the world's largest exporter of bananas diminish and save their land. And we had a charitable entity to it, but it got time and taxing to go down to Ecuador a lot and to fight selling product in the third world country. And I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole, but it's an example of over the course of about 7 years, I tried different things. Am I going to do this? Am I going to do that? But the law kept bringing me back. And it was something that I really enjoyed. I loved the law. I just hated the business of it. I hated how it was run. And I had a hard time until I finally took the risk of saying, we're going to do things differently. And that started for me with deciding I wasn't going to give any equity away in the beginning. That wasn't really things people wanted to chase. Let's get some good people in here. Let's grow it the right way. Let's make technology a centerpiece. That's right around the time I went to Clio, we talked about there for the first time. And let's try and build something different and I think we've now, as we sit here ready to really scale up, as we'll talk about the future, which was part of what I talked to you a little bit about recently. But the moment was that I spent the first 5, 6, 7 years or so fighting growth, not wanting to grow a law firm, looking at other options. And then finally, I just couldn't resist it anymore and realized that this was where I needed to be.
And then, so like you started trying to treat it like a business and build structures and processes. Did you hire a coach? How did you go about
I
figuring
should
that
have.
out?
I should have, man. I really should have. I have one now, but boy, I would have benefited from having the guy I have now 10, 12 years ago. Instead, he would have told me, this is what you're made of. Go do this.
Can,
And it would have helped me. I try to do it by myself.
can you share
And
who your coach is now? Is that okay?
absolutely.
Or
I have no problems.
give him or her
Yeah,
some
give him
credit?
deserves it. So it's a company called Perform Law. I use their CEO, a gentleman named Brian Kennel. A lot of civil defense lawyers know who he was. Just an old soul, man. Good person, been around for a long time, has made his business and those of his wonderful people that work with him around helping law firms through their journey, whether it's financials or some coaching or really keeping you on the right path. I had a large firm that wanted to buy me out a few years ago, and he literally turned to me and I was on the fence. I was like, is this what I should do? I don't want to do that. And he was like, Alex, Almazan's going to get a job. And I'll never forget, he told me that. I was like, you're right, man. Forget it. And it was that kind of thing that sometimes you need, almost like a therapist, right? Like you and I are doing some therapy, almost like a therapist. Good guy.
All right. But was there something, so you started deciding to scale up, but how did you, imagine I'm a solo listening to you right now. I want to scale up.
Yeah.
What would I do?
Yeah. So what I did do was, and this was about 10 years ago, almost to the day, the first real hire that I had to do. And it's funny, I would give advice to people. I'd say, hire an assistant. I would tell people, hire an assistant. You solo lawyers that were trying to do chef, cook, and bottle washer stuff. I'm like, hire an assistant. You might cost you at the time, maybe $60,000 or so, but what you're paying is going to give you back so much more time. I think that's the issue that solos have practicing law is when you're paying money to someone who's a non-billable person, you got to get over the fact that you're, quote, throwing away money or losing, but no, you're creating time for yourself, and time for yourself is money. Now, what you choose to do with that time. Now you have more lawyers who are willing to just take that time and bank it, spend time with their family, mental well-being and work-life balance have become more of a thing than it was 10 years ago. But that was my first thing, was hiring a really capable assistant whose entire job was not to bill. And then I hired 10 years ago was my biggest kind of step forward, which was I hired an office manager when I was only 6 people, and somebody who was going to start doing our trust account, operating account reconciliations, helping me with the annual health insurance, which still to this day we pay 100% of, and really scaling. Yeah, that's a big number. It's like a bigger check now, but really trying to do everything that we could and I realized how much I needed that woman, Sonia, who's been with me for 10 years, was somebody to take away a lot of the headaches. And now she's got 4 people that work for her. But that was the first big step. If you're a solo and you're scaling, your first most important hire is somebody who's actually not going to bill up 1 hour for you.
When you were solo, what was the main area of law? Sorry.
Civil, that's okay. Civil, at that point, I was a little bit of walk through the door law, not doing anything that I commit malpractice, but I did feel like I had the mental acuity and capacity to handle various things. So I handled general liability. I had a big construction plaintiff case that I took as a contingency that helped me fund when I was able to resolve it. I didn't know anything about construction. I had my retired dad, who was an architect, sitting in my tiny conference room with all these plans out as my free expert, trying to help me understand what spalling was and all of these things. In the beginning, it was literally, if it was a big case, I was like, I can figure it out. I'll take it. And that was the beginning. And then I realized it's not a good business model. So I started to hire people to do the things. And this is something that I'm not the only lawyer that has said this. As I scaled, I started to hire lawyers to do things that I no longer enjoyed doing, or that I was just simply no longer top of the heap on. Because in order to be a really great lawyer in a particular area of practice, you have to keep up with the new changes in the law, and you have to be in the grind. You have to really. So once I realized, all right, I'm not going to do that, I would go hire somebody and support them. So each lawyer that was here, primarily somebody who was hired here to do something I no longer wanted to do.
I asked you ahead of time what books were helpful for you during this time period. And the 3 books that you mentioned, so one was Good to Great, which of course has been mentioned many times on this podcast, and it's a great book.
Sorry, I didn't give you something more original.
No, it's all right. The Blue Ocean Strategy is another one you mentioned, which I don't know if I actually read it, and it was really big for me in the time, because everyone spends time in the red ocean, and what is the Blue Ocean Strategy that can bring you to the next level. And to some degree, that's what Jack Newton said. He didn't mention Blue Ocean Strategies. He mentioned the book called The Infinite Game by Simon Sinek. which is similar. I haven't read that, but it sounded similar to don't be stuck in your own area, look somewhere else. Were you able to use blue ocean strategy in your own firm to look outside the
So
box?
so I would tell you that the answer to that is that's precisely what I'm trying to do now, along with another book that's been really helpful for me from Sanjit Choudhary called Reshuffle, which I didn't mention to you at the time, which was just a recent book I read this year that really talks about AI and how AI is reshaping, and that's a blue ocean strategy. So to me, the blue ocean strategy was a big one for me. It was actually recommended to me by someone who's not even a client of mine, a wonderful guy named Dan Winkler who recommended it. He's, Alex, this is a good book. You should try it out. Things I was thinking about. And I went and I read it. And then I heard the next one in an audiobook while I was driving. And really what it was so much about is, David, as you said, it helped you was, yeah, I was absolutely always thinking in that red ocean. And when you do civil defense is 60% of what we do. And that area of practice has been done the exact same way for 50 years. There's been no innovation of any kind in it. It's still a bunch of law firms with first, second, third, fourth year lawyers grinding them out at 2,500 hours a year. And it's a horrible business model. And younger lawyers more and more aren't subscribing to that shit. They're out. Like they do it now.
Yeah.
Like you and I, on my generation, would have taken the job they hated and done it for 2 or 3 years before they quit. Now these people will do it for 2 or 3 months and be like, yeah, okay, I'm out.
Yeah. Yeah.
So the blue ocean was very much about, I saw that. I talked to enough young people to be like, yeah, you shouldn't do it the same way I did it. That was horrible. All we did was the last 100 hours, 50 hours every month was just trying to find it. It wasn't actual practicing. It was trying to meet a metric. And so blue ocean strategies for me is very much how we're using AI at the firm. Is I'm not looking to do things the same way and play in the same red ocean where people just keep the rates the same, keep them artificially low, and try to figure it out and game the system. It was a seminal book for me to really start thinking outside the box. I love the example of, in the book that you read too, of Cirque du Soleil compared to Barnum and Bailey, right, to the old circus, and how Cirque du Soleil took an entirely different model and was like, yeah, you know what? No animals. We're going to make it much more expensive. And look what they've done. So I love that kind of thought process, is how do you take something all the way over here, and AI, I think, is affording us an opportunity to do that.
We're going to circle back to Reshuffle because I think it's a good transition to AI and what you're doing now. But before we do, there's another book that you had mentioned, Principles by Ray Dalio. And I have that book and I've been listening to it. It's such a long book with so much content. I assume you haven't gotten through the whole thing either.
Yeah, no, I went through and pulled from that. So I read it, let's see, probably if I had to guess, probably about 8 years ago. I really subscribed to his ideas around radical transparency. That's a big term of his that I think still to this day has value. And it was around the reality that, David, if you and I are working at the same firm, that we would be have certain metrics of ours publicly shared with everybody else at the firm. And that essentially the lowest common denominator would be shamed into either being better or leaving. And that the top of the equation should be celebrated, should be publicly acknowledged, and that there was some reality to that entire business model for him. So really what I took from his book was the concept of radical transparency and not playing to the lowest common denominator, or not playing to the low-hanging fruit in the office, or really focusing on that. So that was a big principle for me for that, was celebrate your top talent and don't let the anchors drag down your firm. If they leave, you'll be better for it.
The other thing that he talks a lot about is data and how that's what made them so successful. And I know that's something that's important to you at your firm. And part of the transparency is understanding your data. How do you currently use your data? And this can also tie into the reshuffling book and AI, but what kind of data is important to, if I'm a lawyer listening to this, should I be like thinking about, and what kind of tools can I use to organize it?
Yeah. So I think the first thing that is really easy is, if there's a lawyer listening to this and they're not using some sort of AI timekeeper, they need to do that. And that's the first one. It's the easiest one. And I don't know why more people aren't doing it. I feel like people.
What is it, AI timekeeper? How does it work?
It's the best, David. It's because what it is for, especially for small and medium firms, what it does is, because if you're a large firm and you lose a couple $100,000 on a pilot, your law firm doesn't go down. If I lose $200,000 on a pilot, we're moving it with my mom. Like, we can't suffer.
What do you mean
kind of
on
loss.
A pilot?
Meaning if you're using AI, right, and you're using tools and you're trying things out, if you're a large firm and you go through a rabbit hole of trying something out and it doesn't work, you
Oh,
can scale back from it. You don't have to
yeah.
continue the mistake because you already $200,000 in or $100,000 in, whatever the number is. When you're a small firm or a medium firm and you're X amount of dollars in, there's an aspect
You're
to,
saying if the software costs that much.
if the software, right, if the software,
Right.
if the training, if the expense, if whatever it is. What the AI timekeeper did was I said, all right, whatever we're going to do on AI pilots going forward, whatever programs we're going to use, they're going to cost money. And our clients aren't going to immediately fund it. They're going to want to see some data that is measurable, that is going to tell them that they're going to save money or save time, or we're going to reduce or remove some pain point of theirs. So we went with the AI timekeeper first. The ABA released a study about 7 years ago or so, which is still, I'm sure, true to this day. Every lawyer will appreciate this, which is that the average lawyer who bills contemporaneously, which is a unicorn, that bills at the exact moment that they actually, you and I are having this conversation, hang up the phone, I go bill this call. That's a unicorn, single digit percentage of people. The person still loses an hour a day of billable time. And the person who captures their time at the end of the day loses an hour and a half. And that's still another unicorn. Most people are trying to recapture what they did on the 3rd of the month, on the 25th of the month, or at the end of the month. There's so much lost time. What the AI timekeeper does is it takes optical cognitive recognition and just follows you around all day long. Follows you around. We're having this call, this Teams or Zoom. When it's over, it'll automatically create 1 hour telephone conversation or blah, blah, blah with David regarding blah, 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 blah. It'll attach it to the right file. If there's an institutional billing guideline associated, it runs it through it, cleans it, puts it right into your system. So it's capturing your time for you while you're just working. And that was a really
just like
good one.
anything, let's say, this is a perfect example. Are you using it right now?
Oh yeah, 100%.
So this is not billable time. What will it do to know that?
So that's great. So what it'll do on ours is, when it does, what it'll do is it'll pick up the calendar entry for however long you and I have on our Outlook calendar, and it'll just give me the Outlook entry and I'll just delete it, right? Like at the end of the day, I just have to go release the time because you want to make sure, right? Everybody has to verify every AI. We definitely have to verify the time that's going on an invoice.
Yeah.
So I'll just go through it. But at the end of the day, as opposed to entering my
You don't have
time
to
all
add
day
it all
long,
in. Right.
oh my
Yeah.
gosh. So I'll just go
What-
in there and when it says, I'll just delete it.
What's the name of the tool that you use?
So the one that I use is a Clio integration. You and I should get some money for this, but no, I'm kidding. It's Ajax is the one that we use. There's another big one called Laurel that's out there that integrates with other ones, but the Ajax is one that integrates with Clio. So reach out to them, let them know I said I sent you there. They're good people.
Speaking of how we should get money for this, how has, or maybe you won't give a positive, but I assume you will because you were at the conference. How has Clio transformed your practice, if at all?
Totally transformed my practice. In fact, they use me all the time. And I use the word use, but I'm happy to be used in that sense. I just did one with 40 potential clients of theirs last week for half an hour that they asked me if I would do, just to tell them how great the experience has been for them so that they can, if I can help young solos or small firms transition into something and avoid the potholes that I had, I'm happy to do it. How it transformed, well, it took everything when we got on with them 8 years ago, which relatively young for them still compared to now. It was all about being cloud-based, and I love the fact that they had a marketplace. So rather than wait for a release of a feature, you could actually go into their marketplace and go find something that was helpful.
Yep.
That was really cool. That was a big one for me, is go cloud and go into a marketplace to find out. And we've used several of their vendors. I just mentioned one. We use another one called Lock API. Yeah, we've used several of them.
Do you do billing through them?
We do billing through Clio, completely through Clio.
Was that a game changer when they
complete game changer, man. Complete game changer for us. You probably know them too. I know so many law firms that still have 2, sometimes 3 different systems, and they don't even talk to one another. And they have people that are cut and pasting time and all that. So that was a big game changer for us, was for them to be able to do the auto pay and now to be able to get paid through it. So Clio was an absolute game changer for us.
Jack gave an announcement at ClioCon about their 199, taking VLEX's Vincent and making it 199 integrated into their platform. Have you tested that out at all? Does that make sense?
Our pilot ends on November 23rd. We piloted it out, rolled it out to all 19 timekeepers at the firm. We just got an email actually earlier this morning from the woman who's working with us, telling us that our usage rates are really high compared to other firms. That was literally the email I got about 6 hours ago, because I told everybody, get in there, play with it. That's your training. Play with it. I'm not going to tell you, there's no playbook. It's really straightforward. It gives you the prompts. It helps you. Actually, at ClioCon, when you and I were there, I got to meet for 45 minutes with Ed Walters, who I know you've had on your podcast. Talk about an intelligent dude. That guy, I could have used 5 hours and still not had enough time. And when he sat there and basically told me, with as intelligent as he is, that he basically helped create a lot of the prompts, right? And that eventually when VLEX became what now suggests alternate prompts for you, and it was correcting him and better for his own words, was a really good indicator to me that, and that's how we use it. And we use it now all the time. We will actually go from pilot to live in about a week's time.
And just so I understand, you said 19 timekeepers, but you don't have 19 attorneys.
Paralegals that bill time.
Okay.
So 13 lawyers, 6 paralegals.
And correct me if I'm wrong, it says it's $199 a month. Is that per user?
It's per user. So we'll be paying about $50,000 a year for the product. Yeah. So it's $3,800 a month for us.
So tell me, because this didn't exist 6 months ago, 3 months ago, right?
Not even.
50 grand a year. What is, this is really, really important to understand for others who are not here. This is like a complete potential Clio commercial, but that's fine because they deserve it. What is the calculation of how do you figure out why $50,000 a year is worth it? And this is, by the way, the reason this is an important question, there's so many tools out there that AI can do and help you do things, but it might not be really saving you time. It might not be really helping you make more money, but it's just helping you shuffle things around better. And so for 50 grand a year, you have to make a decision. It's more than just helping you do things cleaner and neater.
Yeah, man, that's a great question. So I'll tell you a couple of places. Every managing partner, my size, smaller or bigger, will tell you that their number one pain point isn't AI, it's turnover. Arming people with tools, AI that can make the average lawyer good, the good lawyer great, and the great lawyer save a lot of time, that has some value. So being market leading to provide tools with them, to me, and I've talked to the lawyers in the office, if they are interested in going somewhere else and they don't have something like that to help their career, that's one thing. I think it helps them for purposes of feeling like the culture here actually cares about them, because I do. I care about it. Number two is that it should replace what is already our existing, I won't say whether it's LexisNexis or Westlaw, but our existing legal search software, which is considered overhead. So we'll get that savings back and replace it with this. So that lessens the 50 grand a little bit more. And then the reality that my clients are going to get work product faster. It's going to be better. And I can actually go out and do things like talk to you for an hour, because I know there's a little bit of a guardrail for somebody in my office that, remember when I was a young lawyer, I didn't go bother the boss when I had a question. I would hopefully just go and get it right and file something. This is a really good guardrail for somebody down there who might be really lost, and help them navigate the law a little bit better, because it really gives you a lot of options to help that especially younger lawyer or the older lawyer that might be doing something very sophisticated. So to me, that's the process. You can't pass on this kind of overhead necessarily to the particular client, but to me, that approximate $4,000 a month gives me a hell of a lot of peace of mind.
Was this a no-brainer decision for you, or did you have to like really think about it if it made sense?
Yeah, so I think for us, it was a little bit more of a no-brainer because of how long we've been with Clio, right? So I think where people run into problems with AI is finding the right tool that integrates with whatever it is that you're currently doing. But when you've been with a case management platform for 8 years and they release a product, it makes it a little bit more of a no-brainer for me, because my entire team has been working. So that made it a little bit easier. Yeah.
Now you mentioned if they can do something faster. This is the main. This is why the room was silent when he made the announcement. When you saw that not only was it the legal research, but the AI agents actually taking, I don't know, a complaint and like realizing and doing it much faster. When you bill by the hour, that's a scary proposition right now. Where are you guys at in the billable hour in your clients, and how things are be simpler?
Yeah. So you're so right. You and I were there. It was quiet. You could almost hear a pin drop. And I sit on a subcommittee for a national organization that's currently dealing with this with institutional clients, and some Alexes from across the country that sit on a committee to talk about this. And one of them said this morning, as he and I are preparing to put together an AI discussion on Thursday at our subcommittee meeting, he said to me, he goes, "Alex, I remember sitting at an event in 2000 where they talked about the death of the billable hour." And I thought, no, not yet. Now I do believe it. And I'm a big proponent of it too. I think it's the most horrific manner in which to grade work that could have ever existed. So there's two people to look at it. You either look at it as, oh my God, I'm going to lose a billable hour, or finally think to yourself, finally, this is something that now we all have to figure out together. That's what you have to have conversations with your clients. We got to figure out the best pricing model. But if you could take something that otherwise was taking you 15 hours and now do it in 3, a client might ask you to charge them the 3, but the reality of it is that's not what's going to end up happening any more than you're going to charge them the 15 that it would have taken. But now if you end up somewhere around, let's say 10, 11, 12 hours worth of time, client is getting maybe a 20% savings in that hypothetical I just made up in my head, and you've actually increased your margins. So what you really need to do is start having a conversation about value-based pricing. And one last thing I'll tell you, still the verdict is out on really how much time we're saving because of the verification piece afterwards. So that complaint that you just talked about, you still got to go verify a lot in today. That's so true. Eventually, but there's always going to be a verification.
Eventually, I've talked to Ed from Fastcase.
Yeah.
I actually talked to him at the Legal Tech Fund Summit, like literally 2 days ago about this very product.
Oh my
And I
God,
said,
I'd
"Well,
love
so
to hear
you-"
what happened.
Some of it was off the record, so I could tell you
All right,
afterwards.
tell me the on the record stuff.
But what he said was, there's 4 different agents that are there, and 3 of the agents' job is to verify. And so each one is checking the work of the other agent. So by the time you have to verify it, it's been already checked 3 or 4 times by different agents whose job is to verify the data. So I don't know if they told you that in your pitch, but that's what I heard from him. So that sounded interesting. But just to answer the question today, where are you? I assume you're still billing by the hour mostly?
We still are because of the reality, which is we're going through all of our data. We're trying to, and the larger the firm is, the more data they have to have their predictive analytics be better. But the conversations take time. We're in conversations with our largest institutional clients, and they take time because even AI has been around for several years already. The reality of it is it's new in these conversations. So the way we approach it with everybody is we're still billing you by the hour because of what we just talked about, which was the verification piece for the lawyer still takes enough time where we're not really. And then the other side of it is, to your point, it's like when the flat screen TV came out and it was $10,000, and now like next Friday on Black Friday, you can get one for $200. We're going to have to figure out the reality of how to price it differently.
I assume there's some, dare I say, fear on your part, as many firms are fearful, because it is a really challenging transition. And one of the themes from the conference is, at least in big law, it's the partners at these big firms, they're making a lot of money and they're focused on riding this out until they retire, and they don't want to change. But it's the new attorneys who are coming in who need to know it needs to change, and they want to change it sooner rather than later. But at some point, and also now there are many firms, the GCs are asking them to put on the actual invoice where they used the AI and how long they used it, so they can get a more verification of what tools you're using and why, because the rates are going up and the costs are not going down at all yet. So back to the question to you, is there a fear or not at all? And you're like, this
100% there is. Yeah, I'm not going to lie. Anybody who tells you they're not fearful, man, they're lying. It just, of course there's a fear because we don't have the answers. There's an absolute fear because the clients are using it too.
I was just going to say, sorry.
Yeah, no, that's okay. The clients are using it too, David. So yeah, man, it's so scary. I tell people I'm 52 years old. I started a law firm that when I thought, if you had asked me 10 years ago what 62 in 10 years would look like for me, I'd be like, I don't know, 25, 35 lawyers doing client management, firms running well, and I'm enjoying some much appreciated time doing other things. And here I am 10 years before that date, transitioning and revamping an entire law firm around an entire something that I didn't even hear about 10 years ago. So there's definitely fear every day. But I think fear's good, right? It just means it just means that there's change, and change is going to bring about fear for people. But oh yeah, David, I'm definitely scared.
What are you guys doing? And we only got a few minutes left. I'll let you get back to your day.
Yeah.
What are you guys doing about training internally? I don't know. Yeah. Are you training attorneys? How are you training your attorneys, if at all, to be prepared for this AI revolution?
Yeah, we're very quick to tell them that they're at a firm that is all in. Whatever that means, it just means that we're all in, exploring it, looking at it, everything from how to organize your emails, right? We're piloting Fixer now, which is very well known as one. And so we're looking at it in every aspect of what we do. And we're trying to find the right ways in order to do it. And that future is here and it's moving forward. I'm a big proponent of the fact that if you're a first year lawyer, I do not sign on to this thing that, oh my God, there's going to be no job for you. I think it's the opposite. And you just led to it, which is, no, that first, second, third year lawyer, their biggest obstacle is the 65-year-old partner that's not going to change, but they get an opportunity to come in and really embrace the technology, use it better than their bosses. So for us, a lot of it is to tell them, hey, man, I had the internet. I also had the change of Westlaw from books to online research to natural language. This is just that next step, but it's a big one. So how we train them is, so if it's LexisNexis, for example, which is what we use with their protege in the office, they come in twice a month and they'll do webinars on different things and teach them. So we bring them in as outsiders. We do internal Loom videos with staff where they themselves will show them how they did something within the firm, whether it's Clio work, whether it's teaching people how to use our AI timekeeper. So we use little videos internally because it's really hard to get people to sit down for an hour or half an hour. You lose them. And then
Yeah.
when we have new people start, they get a library of about 15 different videos. None of them are very long, that will give them the baseline. But at the end of the day, the advice is nothing's going to beat playing with it. Everybody uses a Chat GPT or a Claude in their personal life. So we just tell them, come here, play with it on your own. And the tools that we have right now are just Protege, Clio work, our AI timekeeper for the most part, Copilot. We play around a little bit, but really we keep it to those three. I say you throw too many tools at too many people. It's not only too expensive, but it overwhelms.
Sure. Absolutely. Ooh. What a journey. Okay. Last question, because you did talk about it and it's a really interesting topic. Notebook This is before you filled out what is something that most people don't know about you. And it's like how much you use Notebook LLM, which is Google's toolkit. And it's funny you say that. I was using it for a couple of things yesterday, and man, has it improved since I started using it 6 months ago or a year ago, because it's ChatGPT, Claude, they get all the focus and energy. Tell us about what Notebook LLM is and why that is your secret weapon. And then we'll end on that.
Yeah, man. So thanks, pal. And thanks again for having me. What I will tell you is, so Notebook LLM is the Google product that allows you to do a variety of things from having documents to creating podcasts on your own. And that's the one that I use it for the most. Is I get a lot of these things that are really important to us that are maybe 40 pages long or 30 pages long on an article, or even 10 that you don't really have the time to. What I use it all the time for is on a variety of topics, I will throw them into Notebook LLM and hit the studio button, have it create a podcast for me. And that's been a game changer because, listen, we all don't have time to sit down and read those things, but yeah, everybody has time for a 15-minute podcast in the car. So that one, the first time I used it, my mind was blown. I was like, did I just throw in there? Yeah, I just throw in there like 8 articles, and it then suggests some articles for you, gives you the source so you can decide, no, I don't want that one. Yes, that's a good one. And then a man and a woman show up 10 minutes later and have a full-length podcast. It's like you and I are having. That to me was mind-blowing. It was like my big aha moment on AI.
Have you tried the video one now? I could actually create a video for you.
I have only a couple of times for fun. I'm like, this one's going to be crazy. But the podcast one was great.
It got me thinking, because even with this podcast, most people don't have the time to watch watch or listen to 60 minutes, even though I know they would get so much value. I'm going to try messing around with Notebook LM and create it. It's like a 6-7 minute overview video. And we have now like a blog with the Lawyers to Learn. I'm just going to post the 6-minute clips of videos because they're not bad. Because I'm publishing a book in the beginning of the year, and I had to take the book and turn it into the video. And it's, oh, wow, it's pretty cool. So yeah, creating content. There's so many different tools that are out there, and we're messing around with a lot of them. All a plug for Law Lines, that's the sponsor of the show, but we have a AI hub that has 120 hours that just won an award with ACLEA, Association of Continuing Legal Education, of 7 different learning paths, from associates to partners to different research tools to use to help train lawyers from mid to large firms, and is our fastest taken and growing sector of courses. So the more that we could see, the more we're pouring out on that. And yes, to your point, it's still a talking head going through it, but at the end of the day, we're limited by how we can get accredited and for an hour course, but we're trying to keep up as much as anybody else is. And I think, I don't know if, not that you have time, I would love for you to maybe with Josh Lennon or somebody else, or maybe Ed. Why don't you and Ed do a CLE course for Lawline on the new product and how it works? I think that would be a
I
good
actually have a number here because I wanted to reach out to him after the summit and talk to him. What a great what a great end that is. Yeah,
that would be a great thing. And Damien too, who was at VLEX too, who was on the team. But I think that would be really cool. It's a product that's experimenting to what the future will look like. And so we're all very excited to see how it goes.
I will tell you, I will
Yeah.
tell you before you move on, I'm
Yeah.
at the University of Miami Law School. My hand is pointing for anybody who can't see, 1 mile that way. And they have one of the current leaders. They've won several awards, like you with your Ackley Awards. They've won several. I didn't go to school there, so it's not a plug for you. I'm a Gator. But they went to, they started an AI lab called Mila. It might be Mila, but I think it's called, they pronounce it Mila, where in the first week of orientation for this year's first year law students, they were already on AI. They have an AI lab at the school. I'm going to go meet with the assistant dean there next week and the strategic director for AI at the University of Miami to go find out how they're using it, because I want to dig deep. I want to see how they've decided, this great law school, to start teaching their first and second and third year lawyers to really dig deep. So that might be somebody to introduce you to do a podcast with, because to have a prominent law school in this country who's embracing AI for its students, that's my gift to you.
You have the relationship already, or you're meeting?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I've known the director and,
when you have
and the dean for many years.
Fantastic. I love introductions from guests to future guests.
Yeah.
And that's why it's fabulous to do a podcast. This is a gift to me. So thank you. And hopefully it'll be a gift to anybody who listens and hears your journey from first generation, hear your parents' journey, which is unbelievable, to where you are today. I just feel like I lived your life. It's amazing. Like that, I would almost suffice to say, not that I've 2 seniors in high school as well, which I could barely get them to listen to anything that I do in life. But if your daughters someday listen to this podcast, they will really be proud and really enjoy hearing where you were and how you got to where you are.
Thanks, buddy. I appreciate it. Also know that Dad has some good friends. So I appreciate it, man. Thank you.
Absolutely. All right. Thanks, Alex. And thank you for watching Lawyers Who Learn this far. And we'll see you next time.
Yep. Thank you, buddy.